The most beautiful thing about playing Hollow Knight is how it makes you feel. And no, I don't mean frustrated. You don't have to pay any attention to the dense lore or even the main story to know that Hallownest is a place that was once alive, but is now mostly empty. As you walk across Dirtmouth and descend into the Forgotten Crossroads, you don't really feel fear, and it's not sadness exactly. It's something quieter and harder to shake. It's something that gives you this sense of a world that has descended into ruin. It's loneliness that you're feeling. But here's what's strange about that. You're not reading any lore. You're not watching a cutscene. You haven't even talked to an NPC yet. You've only been in the game for a few minutes. So how is it already giving you the sense of a once bustling world that's now barren? The answer is the music. And once I show you how Christopher Larkin built loneliness into this soundtrack at a structural level, you'll never quite hear it the same again. This is the already iconic opening theme. There's one key thing hiding in here that sells this complex idea in a simple arrangement, and once you hear it, you probably won't be able to unhear it. Before I can explain it properly, you just need to know a tiny bit about music theory. I promise I'll keep this brief and we'll get to the juicy stuff in a second. This theme is in F minor, or C minor, or E minor, depending on who you ask, because music is complicated. Let's go with F minor. Now, the key isn't exactly the thing that makes you feel this sense of loneliness, but it's where it all starts. Minor keys tend to sound sad and mournful. You probably already knew that. But the Hollow Knight theme isn't just in a minor key. There's something else, something more specific than sadness and melancholy, and it extends that kind of mopey sound into something more hollow and hopeless. The Aeolian mode, or the natural minor, basically means that the seventh note of the scale is a half step lower than it is in, say, the harmonic mode. That might sound like a minute detail, and on the surface, it is. So why is this so important? How could that change the whole feel of the theme? That seventh note in the standard F minor scale is called the leading tone, and its whole job is to create tension, to make the music feel like it's reaching for resolution. When Larkin lowers that seventh note, the reach disappears. The music stops wanting something. There's no longer a destination. And without a destination, you feel lost. But the mode is just one part of it. There's another big piece of the puzzle, a more obvious one, that's driving home that feeling of loneliness, and it's built around a principle that runs counter to basically everything mainstream game music does. Before I tell you, just listen again. See if you can hear it. There's a lone piano carrying this tune, kind of meandering through bars, much like a lone bug knight meandering through Hallownest. It is, in part, the instrumentation that makes a big difference here. But the thing that Larkin does best, in my opinion, is actually kind of the opposite of instrumentation. It's kind of the opposite of music, actually. There are 156 eighth notes in the theme. Of those 156, the melody plays for just 57 of them, about a third. Your brain is wired to find that unsettling. Silence where there should be sound doesn't feel right. It keeps waiting for something to arrive, and when nothing does, that waiting registers as absence. And I don't have to tell you that absence also makes you feel alone. And there are very specific times throughout the game where silence is just, it hits you harder. Right after a boss fight where there's this intense music that's full and rich and powerful, the music drops out. And that silence starts to flow back in. And this is powerful for a very specific reason. Your brain goes from input, input, input to nothing. You go from feeling stimulated to suddenly feeling back in the emptiness. And each time that happens, the loneliness of it all just intensifies. But by far the coolest thing that Larkin does in this soundtrack isn't about loneliness at all. He does it sparingly, but nowhere is it more present than in City of Tears. Hallownest used to be a civilization, a real one, with politics, religion, art, and ambition. Bugs who dreamed and built and lived and breathed. And then, slowly at first and then all at once, it collapsed. The infection came, the kingdom hollowed out, and what you're walking through when you play is a graveyard of the home it used to be. The music knows this. It remembers. Every track you hear in Hellenest is mourning what the place used to be. Here you have a gentle rolling piano score that sounds like rain, perfectly backing up the visuals. And then this gentle, almost hymn-like melody comes in, and it's haunting. It makes you feel helpless and hopeless. It's heartbreaking. And again, it's partially because the melody isn't triumphant. It doesn't build toward anything. But there's something different than what we saw in the main theme. Something different about the way it makes us feel. For one, this tune is in a major chord, E major if you're wondering, but this song uses what's called the Lydian mode. Technically, that means it has a raised fourth, but what I really care about is how it makes us feel. The Lydian mode notably doesn't give us feelings of sadness and hopelessness. In fact, it's the opposite. The major Lydian scale actually has an uplifting quality. It makes us feel a sense of hope, and you can feel that in the song. City of Tears stands out as the one place in all of Hellenest that actually feels like maybe not all is lost. And if you know about the lore of the place, it's definitely not the backstory that makes you feel that way. This delicately uplifting music is a strange thing in a world full of misery and decay. It's the one place that makes you feel like maybe there is some hope. But there's a little more to the story. Because yes, there's hope. Yes, there's a light, uplifting quality. But there's one more thing right at the end of the track that tells a different story entirely. It takes that hope and smashes it on the ground. And with this one last piece of the puzzle, you go from hopeless and lonely in Hellenest to moderately optimistic, and then right back to that empty feeling, just like after the boss fights. So how does Larkin accomplish this? It's in the final resolution of the song. Larkin resolves the song downward, back to the one chord. Western music has trained your ear to expect tension to resolve upward, to land on a high note that feels like relief. But resolving upward would feel too triumphant. The way it's written, it gives a sense of finality to it, as if to say, this is how City of Tears is now, and it's how it will always be. Defunct, corrupt, hollow, and lonely. And there's one more thing that really sells the story of City of Tears. If you listen carefully, that resolution doesn't come on the one like you'd expect. The last note is rushed. It comes before the end of the previous phrase. Here it is again. Listen to how abrupt the ending sounds. The end, the sense of finality, comes just a little too early. Much like the downfall of Hellenest. And this is perhaps why City of Tears is one of the most memorable areas. It stands out because it's one of the only times in the game when you have even a modicum of hope. But that downward resolution that comes too quickly, it's just telling the story of a place that was once thriving but has descended into darkness. The melody falls rather than rises, and that single compositional choice made consistently across the soundtrack gives the whole game this gravitational pull without you having to read into the lore. Everything in Hellenest sinks. Everything settles into ruin. Even the music is slowly and quietly going under. And when you put it all together, you get a masterpiece. The missing leading tone right in the opening track tells your brain there's no destination. The silence and loneliness in the instrumentation tells your brain something is absent. The truncated hopefulness is offered sparingly, and it says that something has ended and there's nothing you can do about it. And the downward resolutions say nothing in Hellenest rises anymore. There is only decay. That's not an accident. Team Cherry made the music feel lonely because loneliness is the point. The night is a vessel, literally hollow and empty. The world around them is the same, and the music sells the story without you having to read it. That's the magic of video game music. Loneliness is one of the hardest feelings to manufacture in a game because it requires restraint. You have to be willing to leave space empty, to build that absence and trust that players will feel it subconsciously rather than think, what's missing here? And with Hollow Knight, you do. Thanks for watching.